This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. All right, what's up? We're doing cornerback reviews today. So we're going to look at the whole defensive back room, just the corners, not the safeties, nobody else like that, just the corners. And we're going to look at the whole room, see who might make the team, who might be at risk not to make the team, and also kind of anticipate what the overall picture of this room is going to look like at the start of the season. And that's a key word. At the start of the season. I just want to make sure that y'all know I'm not talking about what you might want somebody to be. I'm not talking about a projection of anybody. I'm talking about what we can say in July about what we know about this room in September. So if you think I'm low on somebody, if you think I'm high on somebody, I'm just judging them based off of where they are right now. You know what I mean? So I'm not trying to hate on nobody. I know some people are going to be mad if I say something negative about somebody, but I'm just going to take them from where they are. I hope that they get better, obviously, because I want the team to be good, but I'm also not going to act like a player is where they aren't right now. That being said, let's look at the room. Right now, the Browns have a metric ton of corners in there, almost curse. Martin Emerson, who's ranked 23rd out of all of the cornerbacks in the NFL, I believe 119. Greg Newsome, who was ranked 34th. And then Denzel Ward, who was ranked 88th last year. Played a full season, ranked 88th. Rough year for him. Really rough year for him. Cam, no way to flip it. Rough year. Cam Mitchell, who the Browns drafted, projects to be a contender for the slot corner. AJ Green, who has been a utility corner on this team for a little while. Thomas Graham, Mike Ford, who they signed. He's usually used in special teams as a gunner, but he might make the team as a corner. He's been a pretty terrible corner for the Falcons, but we'll see what happens there. Chris Westry, Tanner McAllister, Caleb Biggers. Y'all better be careful. And my man, Bo Pete Keys. All right, so that's the room. We're going to look at the bottom of this roster. So Cam Mitchell's interesting. He's obviously going to make the team. They don't cut draft picks, especially in the first year of them being with the team. So I don't think anything's happening there. He's going to have a chance to compete for that slot corner position. I think he has a good chance to win that battle because it's not that deep of a competition, right? We're not talking about Greg Newsome or Martin Emerson being in that competition. We're talking about him battling it out with AJ Green, who was an undrafted free agent a couple years ago, and Mike Ford, whose history at that corner position has been not so great with the Atlanta Falcons. If you go back and look at his grades over those periods of times where he was playing corner, he's really just a gunner. And I wonder how much utility that's going to have on this team, but he's somebody who will factor in that competition. I want somebody like a DeAnthony Bell to be factored into this competition because I think he has the ball skills, the tackling skills, the natural instincts to be really good in short spaces, especially when you're talking about somebody who can make a play on the football. I think he will be really great there. But if that's not the plan for DeAnthony Bell, I can't say it is just because I want it to be. And I don't really think that's the plan. It doesn't seem like that's the plan with DeAnthony. I'll be glad to see it happen. If it does happen or develop during camp, that is the case, I'll be glad to see it. But as of right now, I can't really say that is so. Look, Caleb is probably going to get cut. Bo Pete is probably going to get cut. Tanner, I would say, probably going to get cut. Then it comes down to Chris Westry. He might be in that slot corner argument, but he's 6'4". I don't know if he's going to be able to work in tight space. I got to see more out of him, so I think he's probably going to get cut. They're probably going to keep 6 corners. So I would say Cam Mitchell, AJ Green, Thomas Graham, and Mike Ford also gets the boot. That's why I think the 6 would be. Let's talk about the starting picture with these corners. Martin Emerson, Greg Newsome, Denzel Ward. Is there going to be a pecking order 1, 2, 3? I don't think it's going to fall that traditionally. And what I mean by that is I don't think somebody's going to be the number 1 corner on this team. I don't think somebody's going to be the number 2 corner. I don't think somebody's going to be the number 3 corner. I don't think they're going to allocate the matchups like that. I think they're going to allocate the matchups based on skill set. So if you're going up against somebody who has elite speed, Denzel Ward will probably be covering the guy with elite speed. If you're going up against somebody who has elite size, Martin Emerson will probably be going up against that guy who has elite size. And let me make this clear. If their best receiver has elite speed, Denzel Ward will be covering them. If the team's best receiver has elite size and physicality, Martin Emerson will probably be covering them most of the game. If their best receiver is an elite technician, Greg Newsome will probably be covering them the whole game, right? Just because a team's best receiver is their best receiver, I don't think we're just going to automatically throw Denzel Ward at them. I think we're going to use these 3 kind of as a flexible unit. That's what man allows you to do. That's what playing more man coverage allows you to do. When you play more zone, you have to be more strict on who's on what side, what assignments are here, what this breaks down there. But when you play man, it could be a little bit more simple, right? If you want Denzel Ward to cover the team's fastest receiver, but their fastest receiver might not be their best receiver, but their best receiver is more of an Amari Cooper type, then that's probably going to be Greg Newsome that's going to draw that assignment. And I think that's a fine way to go about things when you have these 3. So much worry about using these 3 corners in the offseason has been trying to throw these guys in a traditional binary role for a corner, right? Where you can only have 2 outside corners. You must have a slot, and that's how you play the game. But that's just not how the game's going to be played for this team. They're going to have different ways of going about it. If you look at who the Browns have brought in at linebacker and who they continue to bring in, they're looking at smaller, more athletic linebackers. Why is that the case? Why are they going smaller? Why is the rest of the league going smaller? Because if you have more capable coverage linebackers, then you don't have to worry about having dedicated slot corner positions taking up a disproportionate amount of snaps just because you need somebody small who can cover in some space if your linebackers can already do the job for them. Obviously, there's a trade-off when it comes to run defense and some of the power stuff that you might not be able to run, but it does have a positive benefit for, when you want to run these types of coverage schemes. So having a JOK is going to be helpful. Having somebody who is a really good coverage linebacker in Anthony Walker is going to be helpful. Having extra safeties is going to be helpful because you could use those guys to rotate down or play an extra safety to handle those responsibilities. But the bulk of the coverage is going to be based off of matchups. In my opinion, I think that's how they're going to go about it. And I think it's going to be more common that you'll see Martin Emerson on somebody who matches up well with Martin Emerson. And I think that's the best way you can go about it, because while I do think that all 3 of these corners for the Cleveland Browns are good, I also think that they're all 3 very flawed and have very exploitable weaknesses if they're put in positions to be exploited. I'll go through each one of them, right? Martin Emerson doesn't have the greatest hips, doesn't have the greatest long speed, and definitely doesn't have great explosion out of his hips in the deep part of the field. So if you take him deep, like if he has to cover somebody with some legit speed on a deep post, he's going to get cooked. Right. Anytime he's going to have to turn those hips and sprint with somebody who can run, like not a Deontay Johnson, but, who's like Tyreek Hill, I guess, is the default, or Jerry Jeudy. You don't want Martin Emerson on any of those guys, right? Greg Newsome, is skilled of a technician as he is. He also doesn't have great long speed, and he's not the most twitchy athlete, right? So if you put him on a Mike Williams who can just jump over him, all that technique that he's good at is going to go nowhere, right? Because he doesn't have the twitchiness when it comes to the explosive ability to just jump and catch up with guys, even though he's not slow. I believe he's a 4.4 guy. But like him on Jamar Chase, not the greatest matchup in the world. Like he could cover Jamar Chase for a couple downs, but you don't want that all game, right? Because Jamar Chase can exploit him. Unless Martin Emerson's your other option, then you got to stick with Greg there, right? You would much more preferably have Denzel Ward on somebody like a Jamar Chase, because Denzel Ward is twitchy. He's super fast. He has all the bounce in the world. Like he has those things that can match up with those kind of wide receivers. You want to put these guys in position to be successful, because also with Denzel Ward, right? as twitchy as he is, as supremely athletic as he is, as talented as he is, and his technique is pretty good. He just has focus issues at time on the field, right? Where he just loses focus or drops focus on the play or forgets what he's supposed to do and ends up getting cooked, or maybe he ends up being a little bit aggressive, right? And if you have him on one assignment the whole game, one side the whole game, that can be something that kind of bores him, right? You need to make sure that he's always engaged, always knows what his assignment is, and always knows what his responsibilities are and who's behind him. And you need to keep him in situations like that. So although these are three very talented corners, they're also three very flawed corners, and you want to put them in positions to win as much as possible. And it's just so happens that like the layout of these three corners, and I don't think the Browns are able to, in most instances when they've played the Bengals three DBs, wide receivers, I don't think that the Browns corners are like that much better than the rest of the league's corners. I just think the matchups are there, right? Like if you look at Denzel Ward and Jamar Chase, that's 1-to-1. That's a perfect matchup. If you look at Greg Newsome with T. Higgins, that's a pretty good matchup right there, right? If you look at Tyler Boyd with the Martin Emerson, that's a pretty good matchup. It's ironic that the one time the Browns have lost recently to Joe Burrow was the time that he did not have those three wide receivers available to him. And I know Joe Wood said this, and it's still one of the most ridiculous quotes in NFL history when he said, hey, them not having Jamar Chase and T. Higgins really, really threw off the game plan. But what I get from what he was trying to say there was it messed up our ability to match up perfectly with their skill sets when it comes to our corners. And they were able to take advantage of some of the weaknesses that these corners have, even though they had lesser personnel, because you're matching up strength to strength when you play the Bengals. Because everything that your corners do good is everything that their wide receivers do good. So you're able to match up strength to strength and not worry about adjustments later in the game. So they have to be mindful of that. That's why I think the improvements in the safety room was made, because, hey, look, you're going to have these corners get bad matchups every once in a while. You just need to make sure it doesn't get over the top. That's why you bring in and have three safety looks that you can go to. Some supplemental players. Well, no, let's talk about the slot corner position. It's going to be a battle between AJ Green, Cam Mitchell, Mike Ford. I think Cam Mitchell's probably going to win that spot. If Cam doesn't, it's going to go to AJ Green. I think Mike Ford's a long shot to make the roster, but we'll see. Some supplemental players that will help this unit from outside. Grant Delpit, definitely I can see Grant Delpit helping, especially during rundowns. He's somebody who I think is going to play a lot closer to the line of scrimmage, and I think that's going to be better for him. He seems to have much better instincts in that part of the field, and I think he just plays better football there. So that would also include coverage. I think he'll be a great help there, especially when you run into some athletic tight ends. I think Ronnie McLeod will do some of the cleanup work there at I wouldn't be surprised to see him do some of those slot corner responsibilities. D'Anthony Bell is also somebody I like a lot. And then from the linebacker position, Anthony Walker had a 90 coverage grade. Now, it was in limited snaps, but he was really good in coverage last year. He was really good in coverage the year before. He might just be a good coverage linebacker, at least for what he's asked to do at Mike. So I think that's a good sign there. And then JOK, all the flack that we gave him last year wasn't about his coverage ability. He was still a fine coverage linebacker last year. So that's really good there. So I think your supplemental crop of players is really good. I think your starting crop of players is really good. And I think the room overall is really good. And if I looked at the depth for this team, I would say, again, in my analogy, and I'm going to keep pushing this until it gets over. But there's three levels of preparedness that you can have when it comes to the depth on your roster. And it's much like your level of preparedness when you get a flat tire on the side of the road, right? Do you got fix a flat in your trunk, which means you got nothing? Do you have a donut in your car, which means you got something for a little bit? Or do you have a spare tire, which means you got the solution in the back of the seat, in the back of the car? Which level of preparedness are the Browns when it comes to depth? I would say they're at a spare tire. If something goes down and you lose one of your major three corners, I think you got the solution in the depth, right? I think Cam Mitchell might be able to step up. I think AJ Green might be able to step up, right? You lose two guys and nobody's prepared for that. But if you lose one guy, which is the level of expected preparedness that you should be at, right? Anything else is a disaster. So if you lose one guy, I do think you have the spare parts on this roster to be able to make up for it, even if it's a long-term injury. Now, knock on wood, hope none of that happens, but I think that this roster is prepared for such a thing to go down. So what grade would I give this room? I'm giving them an A. I think this should be an A+ room. The only thing keeping me from giving it an A+ or a better than that grade is the fact that Denzel Ward was terrible last year. And I think we're sugarcoating it. I think we're blaming a lot of it on other things. And yes, Denzel Ward was not done any favors by Joe Woods, but there's no reason that Martin Emerson and Greg Newsome can have respectable grades last year under Joe Woods, and Denzel Ward is at 88th in the league. There's no reason for that. Like, there's no excuse. There's no one person that made that happen. Denzel Ward was definitely responsible for that. Being 88th in the league out of 119 corners when you're as talented as him and as capable as him, I'm not blaming that on Joe Woods. Like, if he was at 30 or 22 or 20, okay, yeah, that's why you had a down year. But 88, that's terrible. And like, he was almost a liability at some points during the year. Like, there's no reason that Denzel Ward should be worse than Martin Emerson or should be rated worse in any category than Martin Emerson and not Grant Delpit. I keep saying Grant Delpit, Greg Newsome. There's no reason for that. So I just need to see Denzel Ward be elite again. I know he can be elite, but I need to see it before I could believe it, because he is on not elite until he's proven that he's elite again watch for me, because he just hasn't been consistent. People make it seem like it's the injuries that make him inconsistent. I don't think it's that he's missed 5 games over the last 2 years. I don't think it's the injuries. The injuries aren't what makes him inconsistent. His level of play just has been inconsistent, right? I think we talk so much about the injuries, we forget that when he's out there, he's inconsistent. You know, and we blame the inconsistency on the injuries. That's not what's been inconsistent with him. He's been inconsistent. And I'm wondering, and I'm a little worried if that was truly just because of Joe Woods. I think some of it was, but you don't drop the 88 just because Joe Woods out there. You had Joe Woods the last 2 years. You weren't this terrible. You know what I mean? So that can't be a proper excuse for why he played so poorly last year. Why him and John Johnson couldn't run a simple cover 2 at times last year. Why he was just the sleepiest man in the world in some of these coverages. Like, he just fell asleep. Why was this happening, right? And have you grown out of those bad habits, or are these going to be what define you for the rest of your career? Because let's also be real, corners have a very short shelf life, right? There was 2 years of Revis Island, and then he was nothing after that. There was 1 year of Nnamdi Island. There was nothing after that. Jalen Ramsey, it was like 2 years where he was hot, and then nothing really after those 2 years. So is that what's happening? Is that what is happening with Denzel Ward? Did he have his hot years? Did he drop his couple of hot albums and now he about to disappear in the ether? Or is he about to continue to show us why we came here, right? Is he about to give us a reintroduction? Because the last album he dropped was trash. Right? If I could use that analogy, he dropped the big day last year. That's just what happened with Denzel Ward. He dropped the big day. He could drop something else. It could be hot this year, but let's not act like last year wasn't the hot shower of hot messes at the cornerback position for him. So that's the only thing. I have relative faith that he's not going to be terrible this year. I don't know if he's going to be back to elite top 10 corner. I really hope so, but I think he's going to at least be in that top 15 range. I have enough faith that whatever was going on just made him just distracted and just disinterested in football at that point. I think if the team is winning games, he'll be more engaged. I think he'll be all right, but we'll see what happens this year. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have a good night.